We're fighting death! I can't beat death. Tell her that.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing some of the criticisms of the last episode that the community has made pretty clear at this point. Not only my comment section, but countless other outlets across the internet, including Reddit or Twitter, Google+, I'm sure, every corner of the World Wide Web seemed to ignite with some rage over certain things that happened during the not-so-long night. My first video was more positive, as I'm a more positive guy, and I'd like to think that the points I made were justified. But I also want to represent those that had an issue with certain things that I too felt were lacking or just could have been done better. It's my hope to bridge the gap over this episode, making people that enjoyed it like myself aware of why people had certain issues with it and explain those, as well as explain the other side of this, or perhaps why showrunners made the choices that they did. This video will cover battle tactics to Arya being the person that killed the Night King. As with all of my videos, I hope to nurture some insightful debate between people that love these shows. I encourage that if you disagree with anything that I say, put it down in the comments and allow others to weigh in as well. Insightful debate, not murdering hordes that attack each other because of their views over a goddamn HBO show about robots. I mean, dragons. All right, let's begin. Firstly, the Dothraki Charge was nonsense. The fact that they only started firing flaming boulders once their people were charging, also nonsense. However, what could have been done better? Well, firing boulders earlier would have thinned out the numbers beforehand. From a cinematic standpoint, it would have also backlit the battle so that the audience could actually see, but more importantly, so that the people standing on the ground or riding horses into the giant wall of undead could actually see what they're charging. The Dothraki charge wasn't signaled on screen. When Jorah yells out, it's after that charge has already begun. He's trying to commit to the charge as well. The Dothraki are excellent fighters, however, they aren't the smartest. Some notable cases of their brooding attitude to win battles instead of methodical planning include when they tried to siege a single city and basically ran straight forward and butchered themselves because they refused to flank the Unsullied guarding it. This charge could have been executed much better, but Melisandre lighting the swords ablaze is likely what started them charging. They were excited, getting the cavalry that isn't known for methodical tactics, but by winning in sheer numbers and vicious confidence in their ability to charge forward. They certainly did not expect to hit a wall of undead. From the audience standpoint, we know, but, they ran forward, hit a wall of undead giants, and that's exactly why we got this quick shot showing as much. Also, before their swords were ever lit on fire, which they 100% had no idea would happen, they were useless anyway. I don't think Dany would ever sign off on these people being expendable, so the showrunners should have addressed why they were using regular curved blades instead of dragonglass. I mean, one line would have worked here. Gendry saying that, man, we don't have enough time to equip everyone would have cleared this up because, most certainly they did run out of time, and this is likely the outcome of that. The battle overall, from a military standpoint, was pretty terrible. I mean, Winterfell is known for how hard it is to breach when you're standing behind those walls. The idea of having nearly everyone stand outside of them is a bit silly. However, all the posts and discussions about, tactical alignment are based on real-world battle plans. Tried and true, certainly, but, not versus the undead. Honestly, they could have gone a million ways with, the reasons that people are standing outside of these gates, if not just because space requirements of Winterfell demand that they need to stand outside. They failed by not explaining the choice, however. Perhaps, again, just one line of dialogue is all we needed here. Not even just in the books, but throughout the show it's enforced how strong this place is. And even the Battle of the Bastards, how stupid Ramsay was for fighting outside of the walls. For Jon to do the exact opposite of what he spoke about, knowing the advantage of Winterfell after conquering this place, that's where they messed up at. People aren't upset that they lined outside to fight. People are upset because it wasn't explained why. From the outside it looks nonsensical. Counterintuitive, even. Also, a few pointed out that you could have placed the trebuchets behind the castle walls. You have 6 shots standing at each of these, and then what? These are huge weapons. These should have been used constantly. I think again, this probably goes to space requirements, but this isn't too big of a sticking point. Now, let's talk about Jorah and Ghost charging in. I agree with this point. Even though I enjoyed seeing Ghost being a fucking badass here, can he kill whites? I mean, Is that a thing? Was he commanded to charge in, or did he just get belly rubs from Jorah and then Jorah couldn't get him to go back to Jon because clearly the lack of screen time shows that Jon is neglecting his dog? Why are these two together? Unless they put dragonglass dentures on this pup, I don't know if he's doing much of anything. Then Jorah somehow made it out alive, which brings me to a point that I agree with more than any other point. Every single person on this front line should be dead. I explained this in my other video as the only tangible way that I could see this many miracles happening is the streaks of dragonfire left by Dany and Jon. Them doing this causes a gap in the incoming wave of undead, allowing the frontline heroes to kill the whites currently on them with only a slow trickle until the flame dies out and the whites charge again. This isn't exactly shown. I feel like they could have had like the whites stopping at this fire line once again to show this exact thing happening, but we know that whites don't like fire. This is honestly why they're alive. Though I still believe it's tragically unlikely that this many survived. Many believe that they should have all died, like literally everyone on the front line, just to show how tragic of a battle this was and reestablish Game of Thrones as having real-world risk, like being on the front line really is, drastically lowering your chance of survival. Maybe Jaime and Brienne survive because of the slight height advantage that they quickly discussed in episode 2. The point of showing us mounted fighters being consumed by this force almost instantly was to show the strength of it, for the same wave to strike moments later and 90% of the front line to make it all the way back to this fort. I mean, that's a stretch, and perhaps justified in some criticism, even though these are all famed fighters and, Dany did relieve the assault on them. Another gripe that people have is the repetitive use of what looked like certain death, only to be saved in the last second a dozen times. This, of course, was used to make people believe that their favorite characters would perish at any second, building additional suspense. I believe that people aren't upset that this is being used, but that it's used so many times without anyone vastly important dying to it. Not to say important people didn't die. I mean, Ed here is undoubtedly Azor Ahai in the books, but, it would just be more impacting if Gendry or Grey Worm didn't survive the wall of undead that just assaulted them. Where to next? Okay, so the crypts. The crypts were reinforced repeatedly to be the safest spot humanly possible in Winterfell. Pretty odd since you're versing the reanimator of dead things and you seek refuge among the dead. However, as comical as this was before the battle, it kind of turns out that even with corpses coming back to life, the crypts were pretty safe in comparison to everything else during Winterfell. No one important died in the crypts, so yeah, I count that as a victory. Although I feel like they should have, had some kind of defense down here, a couple fighters, if nothing else, just to guard the doors from people trying to seek refuge. One of the more widely agreed upon issues was the lighting of this episode. It was too dark. I mean, plain and simple. Now, the cinematographer has come out defending how dark it was, that it's always been a dark show. Stating so far is that I know it wasn't too dark because I shot it. This was a mistake. The show always has been dark, certainly. So over time, we, the audience, have learned to turn off every possible light in the living room, to, adjust the settings, to get ready for this. So for the audience that is already prepped in that regard, for them to still have this issue shows how dark it was. Honestly, it felt like they were cutting corners and poorly lit it so that they wouldn't have to animate as much of the detail. This is a point that I agree with, but equally, darkness is what they were fighting, so, maybe it's an immersion thing there. I personally just wish that they would have used the flaming boulders earlier, or even put more dragonfire on the ground so that this wasn't ever debated. Alright, that's enough of the little stuff. Let's dive into Bran, the Night King, Arya, and Melisandre. Also, the fact that Dany's hair was perfect throughout, which I think is probably the biggest point that people are upset about. Honestly, though, the major issue is that people are upset that Arya was the one who killed the Night King. They're upset that she was somehow able to get anywhere close to him without being stopped or spotted by whites, and they're upset that all of these previous seasons have been building Jon to be the one to defeat him, and, he didn't even get to sword fight the Iceman. In my last video, I reported that I enjoyed Arya killing the Night King. Even though I had some issues, I was able to justify everything that happened. I'll try to do that same thing, but, perhaps a little better this time. Firstly, I do agree that her character arc should have been, leading to her avenging her family, finishing that list and, killing Cersei. Her master assassin skills being used to take down the most evil woman in the world who played an enormous part in the destruction of her own family. I agree with that wholeheartedly, but she came north once she heard Jon came back to Winterfell. And that's that. She's here now, so what other role could she play? In my previous video, I actually state that, it was Arya who kills the Night King, or kills the Night King's dragon. I was leaning more toward the dragon, admittedly, because they pointed out this cool, shiny new weapon that she was going to have, but she was built to be quiet and fast, and had a natural-born ability for fighting ever since she was a child. Even though the showrunners, idiotically, I might add, told us in an interview that this wasn't planned out until, 3 years ago, and that they were doing it solely because it was unexpected, this still works. Her storyline all led up to her being so quiet that she could walk across a snow-covered field and sneak up on Jon here. In that clip, she even does it in the exact same spot that she kills the Night King. In the episodes before, she questions Gendry about how they move and behave to better understand how to fight them. During this episode, she uses her speed to dodge across an entire group of them without getting hurt. Also, during this episode, it shows her covertly moving around them inside the library. She is a fucking badass assassin, and she just learned everything that she needs to accomplish this one thing, stabbing the Night King with the pointy end. So, how did she get so close? Well, she ran. It may not be the best answer, and I would like to think that the Blue Eyes prophecy that Melisandre provided actually meant that she was going to use a White's face and traverse closer, and then boom, she rips it off and stabs him. But I think what we watched, they developed how well she can travel among these slower undead creatures and how stealthily she can get there. The White Walker seeing her coming is probably the only reason he ever turned around, because again, they established how quiet she was when sneaking up on Jon. It's admittedly a stretch that she was this quiet while somehow jumping into the air and from no explicable advantage point, but, they built her to be this, and she just did what she was built to do. Not killing the Night King, but she was built to be this assassin, and she used her assassin skills, which she quantifiably learned, and we watched her learn, to do, one thing. Again, sticking him with the pointy end. So, I believe it's entirely possible that she could have done this. However, something else that subtracts from this is who they developed the Night King into. He was smart. He mocked Jon, he set traps for dragons. He arguably had the foresight similar to Bran and Melisandre at times. So why, at the end of all of this, is he just enacting what the Children of the Forest created him to do, killing all of humanity? The writer told us that this symbol was the Night King's upside-down cross. You're telling me that he's mocking his own creators while still doing what they built him to do? I agree largely with the oddities pointed out with the Night King. I do, however, insist that Arya killed him fair and square, and they showed plenty that led up to her delivering that killing blow. However, what about Jon? Well, Jon was the uniter in this story. He brought every piece together that needed to be here in order to make that killing blow possible. The Salty Nerd from Salty Nerd Podcast and I were discussing this integration and maybe how it could have been better. Since countless times it's developed that he would be the savior here and not just the person who gets bailed out by, other people in the last minute. We came to the conclusion that if Jon and Arya had somehow fought this final bout together, it would have wrapped together, so much more. Everything prophesized about Jon's role. It could have even shown him being shocked by Arya's fighting skill on screen, maybe then saving her and insisting that she run away, only to be outdone by her own murdering of a White Walker, and then boom, a tenth of the undead army would be killed. They could have even battled their way to the Night King, and Jon could have been defeated and Arya uses the same dagger trick. This would have been a truly stunning sight, and a perfect reunion of these characters. Instead, now Jon will simply hear about Arya killing the Night King. Although, a theory does exist that claims that Jon was much more involved than we thought. In this clip here, it can be argued that he's yelling, "Go, go, go," as if seeing the super quick Arya running to save Bran, and he's shouting words of encouragement. Listen again. I like this. I don't know if I'm hearing it because I want to hear it, or because it's actually happening, but yeah, I like it. Lastly, let's discuss the entire storyline of being in the right moment at the right time. This is what all the blurry visions of the future led up to, being explained by everyone having a role, and this would be the only way that this exact thing worked. Kind of like how Doctor Strange only saw one outcome in which everyone won.
The Lord brought him back for a purpose. Now that purpose has been served.
I don't think people are saying that this is inherently bad. It's just a common trope, and it just feels kind of off. Is the Lord of Light Bran? Why did the Lord of Light never get fully explained? He commanded Mel to support Stannis, and then Jon, and in the end, it was Arya. Again, all were correct, because if she didn't support Stannis, then she never would have met Jon, and if she never met Jon, she would have never rezzed Jon. And if that didn't happen, we would have lost the Battle of the Bastards, because no wildlings would have joined. Thus, even less numbers. No Battle of the Bastards means that Arya would have gone south to King's Landing instead of hearing of her brother's victory back home. No Arya, no victory here. So yeah, prophecy fulfilled, but like in a really weird way. Arya killed the Night King. Jon, and in proxy, the Lord of Light, united everyone. Dany being one of those who saved our heroes with her dragons. I don't know. I like it. I think a few of these points are confusing, if not purposely so, in lack of a better thought-out plan because they didn't have the books guiding them to get to this point. Also, we're in the last 2 seasons, so things have been rushed. That's kind of been clear for the past 3 years. I'm okay with most of this so far, and if I missed anything, please point it out. Nothing has really been that big to impact the enjoyment like I fear that it has for some. And ultimately, I hope this video explains some of the issues across the board. I pray this video doesn't age well, meaning that everything is wrapped up perfectly, and the last 3 episodes over time, people will forget about all the little things that bother them now. We love Game of Thrones, and we want the most from this universe. With 3 episodes left, we need to have a little faith that D&D can finish strong. I really think that they can. I think an issue that they face, and probably similar to what Westworld faces, is I think that people spend so much time theory crafting how this final season would be that we make up these perfect stories in our mind that, are perfect to us. But when it doesn't happen, it's heartbreaking, and we need to just sit back and enjoy, not let the disappointment of things not going our way impact the feelings that we have about what's actually happening. And with that, the end of the video. If you guys like this, please be sure to subscribe for more content just like it. Big shout out to the awesome people who support me on Patreon. Chris Cole and Michael Link, you're both amazing. Overall, I'm a positive guy that just likes making videos about TV shows. I liked this episode, even with some of the issues, but I'm an engineer in real life, so breaking things down like this and isolating problems is also a part of who I am. I hope to see some more awesome debates in the comments, although I do hope that, at this point, some of the more polarizing things have been addressed. Much love, everybody, and I can't wait to talk to you all again soon.